So is the brand new M2 Mac Mini Pro fast enough for creative work, or do you need to pick up a Mac Studio? Let's find out. Welcome back to the channel. So right off the bat, what I want to do is I want to set the stage here. Number one, I hate benchmarks, but I'm going to have to use them in this video, but this is going to be interesting, so stay with us. Number two, is the brand new M2 Mac Mini Pro, is that going to be fast enough for creative work, YouTube stuff, 4K editing in different videos, and also maybe some photo work and stuff like that? Is it going to be fast enough? And I'm going to prove it to you one way or the other in this video, so stay tuned for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some charts. Now I'm going to use Geekbench 5. It's kind of a good mix of CPU and a little bit of GPU, but it's not the end-all, end-all. All these different benchmarks, definitely look at other things, like you would want to look at metal benchmarks. Metal, if you're doing 3D rendering or stuff like that. But for this particular video, I'm just going to show you how things correlate with each other from the M1 Mac Mini all the way through all the M2s, and then even some Mac Studios, and then even some Mac Pros, which are going to shock you, trust me. All right, and then after that, I'm going to show you all the different hard drive speeds, basically, give or take a little bit, of the whole line of the brand new M2 Mac Minis. So what the base model and then the M2 Mac Mini Pros, what are the difference in hard drives depending on the size of the hard drive you get? That's going to be number two. And then the third thing I'm going to show you is just a render test between the M2 Mac Mini Pro and then also a Mac Studio that's kind of a higher up or middle end Mac Studio. Just show you what the difference is and is it worth the cost there. So stick with me here. Let's get into the video. It's going to be exciting. I'm going to share my screen. Let's go. All right, let's set the stage here on this first screen right here. I just want to set this right off the bat. Here's the M1 Mac Mini base. It's got 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU. This first score is going to be the single core of the Geekbench 5 scores. The second is going to be the multi-core, right? That's 7443, cost $549 right now. You can see here's the M2 base Mac Mini right here. It's got 8-core GPU, 8-core CPU, 10-core GPU, and basically you can see it does a little bit better in single core 1889, and it does quite a bit better in multi-core 8800, and it's only $50 more. Again, the hard drives I'll show you are going to be a little bit different, but as far as just, I would probably go with the M2 there, obviously, than the M1, but you can see the difference in scores. But that's not where it gets interesting. Let's keep going. All right, so on this slide, it's pretty exciting. Now what I'm going to do is these first two I just showed you, but the third one here is the M2 Pro Mac Mini, 10-core CPU, 16-core GPU. You can see here, it's very similar. It's actually a little bit lower than that one, but it's just because of testing and stuff. It's probably the same. It comes in at $1,876 on single core, $11,750 on multi-core. So it's quite a big jump there. You can see it, and the cost is $1,299. So that's also a big jump. It's over double as much money, right? That's almost over double, actually. So that's going to be there. Now there's this other one that a lot of people don't talk about. It's the M2 Pro Mac Mini, but I call kind of this number two. It comes with a 12-core CPU and a 19-core GPU. You can actually upgrade that and get this. So it's going to have a little bit higher single core. You can see 1919, not crazy or higher, but very similar. But look at this, 14,462 versus 8,800 for the base. Quite a big difference there, and it costs only $1599 only, but still, I'm going to show you why that's important. So $1599 is a lot compared to $599 or $1299, but look at the performance you're going to get there. So if we go down to basically the base model of the Apple M1 Max Studio, 10-core CPU, 24-core GPU, you can see there's a lot more GPU, 5 more cores. This comes in, look at this, the single core is actually a lot slower because it's first generation M1, but over here it's 12,336. You can see it right there, costs $1,900. But look at these numbers that jump out right here. So this has actually got a higher multi-core, the M2, this kind of other version here, and it's got it's actually $400 or $500 less depending on how you look at it. I guess around, depending on sales and stuff, maybe $400. So you can see that this is going to be the sweet spot right in here. If you're going to be kind of a higher end creative person, look for this the M2 Pro Mac Mini with this upgraded CPU, upgraded GPU, and you're going to get a little bit faster system than obviously the Mac Studio, the base model, and you're going to save about $400. And as we go down the list here, here's the Apple M1 Ultra Studio. So this is going to be the Ultra chip. You can see here it's 20-core CPU, 32-core GPU, quite a bit more there, obviously. Again, single core is actually slower than the M2 versions, but this goes all the way up to 23,000. Now you're going to say, is it worth it to go to 23,000? That's a lot more than 14. But if you look over here, the cost over here is $4,000. So $4,000 versus basically $1,599. You can do the math there. Is it worth it to you? A lot of people it will not be. And as you go down the list, this is just the shocker here. Take a look at this, 2019 Mac Pro. It's the W3223 8-core. This is going to be the one from 2019, the Mac Pro, and it was $6,000. $6,000, and look at this. Single core is only 1,000 basically, and then the multi-core is 8,042. So this version that's $6,000, which they still sell, is actually slower than the M2 over here base model for $599. Crazy. And I don't even want to get into the next one. This is the W3275M, the 28 core version of this Pro version. Look at this. Single core is still super slow. 20,000 only on the multi-core, which is slower than, obviously the Ultra. But look at the cost there. $13,000. It's the cost of a car. The cost of a car, and they're still selling it. Crazy. All right, let's look at some hard drive speeds now. All right, so now what we have is something interesting. So if you went out and bought an M2 Mac Mini, let's say you decided that was right for you. What about the hard drive speeds of all the different units there? So let's look at this graph over here. Here's the base model. Now, again, I kind of have this mislabeled. This actually means 256 gigabytes, and I'll put that on the screen right here. But basically, if you get the base model with 256 gigabytes, it doesn't really matter if it's the base model, it's the 256 gigabytes. You're gonna have about 1,800 megabytes per second writes, 1,800 reads. That's give or take a little bit. So that's gonna be the slowest hard drive you can get if you get the 256 gigabyte version of the M2, right? As we go down the list here, if you go with this version and it comes, it's a lot of times the minimum you can get on it is going to be 512. So basically, if you get the 512 gigabyte version, now that version of the M2 Mac Mini is going to have about 3,300 megabytes per second on the writes, 3,100 megabytes per second on the reads. So you can see it almost doubled there, not quite, but almost. And then if you go kind of with this Pro version, and again, you have to upgrade it again. You have to go to the 1 terabyte. That's what I don't have in the graph here. But if you go with the 1 terabyte SSD drive, it gets even faster from the 512. So now you're looking at 6,200 megabytes per second on the writes, 5,100 megabytes per second on the reads. So it really matters. 256 is pretty slow. In the middle is 512, that's 3,300. And then if you want the full 6,200, you got to go with the 1 terabyte drive. And then finally, just to show you what all this stuff means here, let's take a look at the screen over here. Here's a Final Cut Pro 4K edit, and it was about 8 minutes and 20 seconds for the actual edit, the length of it. If you look here, here's the M2 Pro Mac Mini, right? This is going to be the middle. This is the one that costs $12.99, all right? It took 5 minutes and 11 seconds. For $1,299, that's what you get. So if you go with the M1 Max Studio right here, this is going to be kind of I think this is a little bit of an upgraded version. It's going to be the 10-core CPU, 32-core GPU. I believe this is like $2,200 somewhere in there. So you're talking $12.99 versus $2,200. It's going to take about 4 minutes and 8 seconds. You can see it's basically about a minute difference there for an 8-minute video to actually go ahead and edit it out or render it or what have you call it. And so look at there, that's not much of a difference, and you're spending almost double as much money there. So if you look at this, you got to kind of scratch your head. Is it the M2 Pro Mac Mini right for you, or is it the M1 Max Studio? You got to make the decision. I would say it's the M2 Pro. All right, let's wrap this up now. So you saw the different versions of the M2 Mac Mini, right? There's the base model, which you can get most stuff. It's pretty good. You can do whatever you want on that. It's not going to be the fastest. But then there's going to be the upgraded, the M2 Mac Mini Pro. And then the Pro, kind of what I put number 2, which is that one that's about $15.99. And that's the one I think you want to get for super high-end creative work. It's going to be very comparable to the Studio in almost every respect. You just want to make sure you get, I think you can only get 512. And then you're going to get that 3,000 megabytes per second, which is plenty fast for anything on the SSD drive. So if you get, I would say the $12.99 or the $15.99 version, you're going to be just as good as the Mac Studio. I don't see any reason why you should get that and spend the extra money. A lot of people might come out and say there's other reasons and stuff. I mean, there's going to be different ports and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, always want to save your money because you're always going to want something new in a couple years, and something new is going to come out next year. So if you can get away with it for a couple years, sell it. That's what I like to say to do. But you can see the numbers. They speak for themselves. Obviously, it's only Geekbench 5. It's only one metric. And I mean, there's going to be a lot of other ones that, obviously people will come back and say, well, in metal, this one kills this one, and this one kills it. So at the end of the day, I got to use something, right? And so I use that. I just want to put the data out there and let you guys decide what you want to do. We'll talk to everybody soon. And again, have a great year. Have a great start to your year. We'll talk to you in a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 days. Peace.